Hi everyone, this is Neha Gupta, founder of College Shortcuts and Elite Private Tutors. I am honored to have Dr. Shefali Tsabary on our show today, College Shortcuts TV. Dr. Shefali has been on Oprah, Super Soul Sunday, and she's the leading expert on parenting around the world. She's one of the best-selling authors of The Conscious Parent, and she's just launched her latest book, The Awakened Family. And she's holding an incredible summit that is a must-have for every parent in New York in October. So welcome, Dr. Shefali. We are so excited to see you here today.
Thanks, Neha. I'm so excited to be with you.
Absolutely. So let's get started. One of the questions that a lot of people wonder is, do you feel like the education system in America is built in a way that causes anxiety and stress for both parents and students?
I think so, yes. I think it's so focused on grades and outcome and putting everybody in the same flow and not really understanding that kids learn differently and they appreciate different subjects differently and everyone's at a different level. And I understand that schools can't do that because it would be so hard to make everything so individualized.
Absolutely.
But because it's not, and because every kid is such a unique individual, then things kind of fall astray and kids feel pressure cookered into being one, being the same, competing for that top one spot. And so that engenders anxiety. But there's a lot we parents can do to buffer that, I think.
Absolutely. So following that, I would say, what would you say is one method or tool that you have found effective for parents when raising teenagers? And I'll contribute of what I've seen with, the clients we've worked with, the one thing that we've seen over and over. Can you say that maybe there's a trend that you've noticed with some of the clients you've worked with that you would say, wow, this is a tool or this is a strategy that almost every parent, if they had this, would really help them during the teenage phase of their children's life?
Well, I think teens, because they're discovering their voice and their own sovereign strength, they kind of push back against the parents.
Yes.
And parents get so triggered and take it so personally and push back in, and then there's a power struggle. So how do we as parents go behind them, say I got your back, make them feel like you're their ally, their support. If you go head to head with a teenager, then somebody's going to go down and it's not going to be good. And both are going to lose at the end of it. So as parents, we have to create that deep connection, create that sense that the teenage feels like we are their allies, we got their back, we got their support, and then they'll open up to us. And that's how we go in from the back door, not from the front door, I think.
Absolutely. One of the biggest trends I've seen with some of the moms I've worked with that have really figured out how to build an incredible relationship with their teenager is just open, authentic communication and being very honest about where maybe their shortcomings are or where they had to learn from their mistakes and being open and honest about it. And I think that's one thing that can really help shift what you call the butting of heads that happens between the teenager and the parent when the communication is, as you said in another interview, where one is looked at as dominant in power and the other one is not feeling that same feeling, where you can be, I don't know if I would even say equals, but in a way where you can really be, like you said, allies with each other.
And that's what I teach in my work and at my summit in New York City. I teach parents how to not get entangled up in that power struggle, not even to look at it as a me versus you, and how to create that deep connection with your children. There is a way to do it, but you have to harness it, you have to cultivate it, you have to work hard on it, and you have to believe that it's necessary for your children.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I've been having a cold, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So one of the things I've been criticized about is, running elite private tutors and college shortcuts is that I'm contributing to the rat race of the education system. So I would love to know your take on that. What is your view about parents having tutors or having a college consultant by their side trying to navigate a system that they may not be fully familiar with?
Well, I think, there's no problem in having a tutor. In fact, tutors are great. You help your kid in the areas they need help in. And your services are great because you actually demystify this huge jungle out there. I think it's wonderful that you exist. I think there just needs to be the right attitude that we're doing this for your ease and for your comfort. And if you don't get into a school, then that rejection is not the end of the world.
Absolutely.
If you get a C grade, that's not the end of the world. It just means that we have to recharge, re-strategize, discover new ways to help you survive. But let's not fool our children that this is not a rat race. It is a rat race, but
Right.
we're going to help them to succeed with ease and comfort. And that's where people like you come in to actually demystify, to make it easy, to untangle all the rigmarole and the enormous, overwhelming, feeling that you get when you're facing the college application process.
Absolutely. I look at other cultures, and, I had a friend write a book about how she studied different cultures around the world. And one of the biggest things that she had found in Asian cultures was this, what they call Master G, who would come home after school
Yes.
and work on the homework with the children.
Yes.
It wasn't actually something that fell under the mother's role or even the father's role.
Yes.
And it was a teacher who would come, answer the questions. And, even in my own life, I had an aunt who did that for me. And, I get tears in my eyes because she's a huge inspiration to why I do what I do. For me, the reason I love having tutors help families is, our tagline is making moms' lives easier every day. And tutoring isn't always a bad thing. It doesn't mean that because your child is bad at a subject that they're actually bad at it. It could be that they just need someone to sit there one-on-one and to really explain it.
And I agree with you that after a certain age, especially with teenagers, it should not be the parent, because then you inevitably get into these power struggles. It should be outsourced. I always say that. And keep it impersonal so that your relationship with your kid is about deep connection. And the tutor creates that relationship where they can push the kid, because the kid, when they're pushed by a tutor, it's a very different feeling they have.
Totally.
Like if they're pushed by their parent.
Yes.
When they're pushed by their parent, they want to push back. When they're
Right.
pushed by a tutor, they take it as encouragement. So
Yeah.
for sure, especially in the teenage years, tutoring should be something that should be outsourced, not looked at as a handicap. It's definitely an additional supplemental muscle builder that I call it a muscle builder. Why shouldn't we help our children?
Absolutely. And so many parents are upset when their children don't perform well or when they haven't hit a certain standard. Mm-hmm. And what is your tip for not just the parent, but also the teenager when you're coming across this? Why didn't you, I talk about in my speeches, for example, Neha, if you can make a 96, you can make 100. And there was this standard that was constantly given to me. What are your recommendations for parents out there that are trying to deal with their inner child, trying to deal with their, expectations of not only themselves, the society around them, the culture they're around, but also how do you handle and navigate that with a teen when you know that they could be better?
It's hard. I think if your kid is getting an A grade, and then you make them from a 96 to 100, that's ridiculous.
I know.
That's just pure your ego.
Yes.
Even a B grade, really, do you want to shame them? You could encourage them, but you don't need to shame them. Now, if you're getting to a C grade and a D grade, again, you don't need to shame them, but you need to ask, why is it that my kid is failing?
Right.
How can I help my kid succeed? Not to get an A grade, but just to kind of not fail, right? How do I
Totally.
help them to feel better about this subject? How can I help them to learn? So again, we have to know where the ego is setting in at which stage. If your kid is getting a D grade, it's not necessarily ego if you're stepping in to say, hey, we need to change the schedule, we need to change the way we're doing things, and I need to help you. That kind of intervention doesn't have to be an ego-based intervention. In the 90s, if your kid is already in the 90s and now you're pushing them to get 100, that's ego. So you have to always
Totally.
watch the ego and where you're coming from and how you're helping your child and how you're intervening. If you're heavy ego, you're going to create resistance in your kid and they're going to shut down. If you come truly in the service of helping them, they will be more open to your input.
Absolutely. And, looking at the college admissions process, because that's something we really focus at College Shortcuts of helping students with our online video programs, our consulting, how to get to college in 21 days, breaking that formula down. Do you feel like the college admissions process is creating an agenda out of parenting?
Totally. I mean, the schools will blame the college admission process. The parents will blame the school. And
Yes.
the kid will be lost at sea, right? So
Okay.
why is it that the school is feeling the pressure from the college, but then why is it that the parent is feeling pressure from the school? So it's become insane, right? And now kids have to do 2 years of AP in high school. I mean, so what was already extraordinary pressure has now become over the top pressure. And the kid is failing, right? The kid is losing out in here. kid is losing out on sleep, on their emotional well-being, on having a childhood.
Right.
So yes, I do believe that it's being set up from college, but I do believe that it's the middleman, the schools, that need to not absorb the pressure. But it's hard, right? The schools want to have a success rate for the parents. So we're all kind of connected in this interconnected web. Somebody has to agree on their own to cut the cord and say, I'm not falling into this.
Totally.
And I teach parents how not to fall into it. And they get scared because they feel like their kid is the only kid on the block who's not going to get into school because they're not
Yes.
subscribing. But I go, you have to learn to value, well-being and childhood more than that. Not that you don't take care of the grades, but it cannot be over well-being. So it's where you put
Absolutely.
stock. And if you put stock over achievement only, then your kid is going to pay a price in well-being.
Beautifully said. And, that's a huge thing I say in my master classes about the fact that, there's so many factors that colleges are looking at in the process. They're looking at the GPA, yes. They're looking at the test scores. But they're also looking at the resume and essay. And I talk about how when your child can find their passion and their gift, and they try different things, maybe they fail at certain things, maybe they learn what they love to do, and you look at the combination of your child from the outside and say, what is their personality? What is their strengths? What are the things they love to do? What are the things they hate to do? And looking at it from that perspective, and then looking at the essay and all the emotional grit, the resilience, the things that they've learned through all of their experiences, that's more than just a test grade.
Yes. Yes, and parents have to buy into that, right?
Yes.
Parents have to buy into that there's a whole personality. But if the parent is coming out of fear and lack and scarcity themselves, they're highly anxious, then they're going to forget that wider perspective, right? That's what happens to parents. We love our children, but we get so scared that if they're not with the top of the top, they're going to fall behind and then lose out in the long run of life. This comes from the parents' own fear. And I teach parents how to let go of that anxiety, because that anxiety will create a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it will come true then. So when we unplug from anxiety and work from a state of abundance, then we create in our children a sense of well-being and worth that transcends grades. And when
Yes.
it transcends grades, the kid, even when they fail then, are going to know how to pick themselves up. That's grit and that's resilience.
Exactly. And it's amazing. In the last year, Harvard put a report out called Turning the Tide, where 100
Yes.
colleges signed in, and they
Yes.
talked about wanting to see, empathy,
Yes.
impact,
Compassion,
and
yes.
passion. And a lot of people don't know what to do with that. They're saying before, if you look at in 1988, Columbia accepted 65% of students. Now they barely accept 6%. So they're trying to find this formula or this exact way to get in. And although I do teach obviously shortcuts, one of the biggest things I talk about is what is it that makes your kid them? What is it about them that makes them really stand out? And for me, I found my passion for tutoring as a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And I do believe that if you allow your child to flourish and do things that you may not even agree with, I took a lot of odds and ends internships. My mom and dad were like, what are you doing? You got to focus on your grades. I was like, I might want to open a Chinese restaurant. I worked at Payway at one point. I worked at a flower store. There were lessons that I learned that my parents couldn't teach me, even as entrepreneurs, about showing up on time, being there for people. What is it like to be around this certain group of people versus what I was raised at? What kind of gratefulness should I have for my life that they honestly were trying to teach me, but they couldn't? And I do believe that that whole viewpoint of being a holistic child, not just about the grades and the test scores, that's where I think tutors can absolutely come in and support the child, so that stress and anxiety doesn't feel like the entire world is on their shoulders. That's why we do what we do. But from the college admissions process, there's so many other beautiful sides. And one of the biggest things I always say is, if you're going to learn anything from me, I just want you to find some hope in the process.
Yes, yes. And that there's a bigger picture. It's not just about this one grade, and it's about a discovery process, not about just one outcome that fits everyone.
Right. And it's interesting. In my course, I even have this entire video. It's a 10-minute video just about how to handle acceptances and how to handle rejections. And one of the main things I say is that colleges reject valedictorians all the time.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for a well-rounded student body. So you've got to figure out what it is about you that makes you incredible, not just, here's my GPA, here's my perfect SAT score.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So, Shefali, in conclusion, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your event coming up, this incredible summit where you're bringing together incredible thought leaders for a weekend in New York.
Well, I do believe that we kind of all need to go to school, including parents,
Yes.
not just by reading books, but truly engaging in a collective experience of what it means to be a parent and learning how to be the most conscious parent you can be. So, all my work is about raising the parent self. We raise our children, we send them for courses, we're so invested in them getting an A grade. What
Totally.
about us having a space where we learn how to be the best parents we can be? So that's what I'm putting together in New York City in October. Love to invite your audience to come and explore and invest in themselves in self growth and transformation. Because really, you can buy your kid a $700 sneaker, you can buy them the latest Xbox, but if you yourself are not transformed from the inside and you are their primary role model, then really all of that goes to waste at the end of the day. So the best gift you can give your kids is your transformation. So it's on my website at drshefali.com, and they can register to buy tickets there.
Absolutely. That sounds incredible. Guys, this is a must-have. To be in the same room as Dr. Shefali teaching about parenting, I mean, this is the creme de la creme. So, Dr. Shefali, I've had such a wonderful time asking you questions here today. Every parent on the line, I don't care where you're located, fly to New York and get to that event.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So much.
Thank you.